what you want, when you want it, where you want it. This is The Mesh.
What do you get when you combine decades of Eastern Carolina barbecue heritage, COVID quarantine, and a whole bunch of wiener dogs? We find out in this episode of the Low and Slow Barbecue Show as Scott Schiffel, also known as Doxie Guy, introduces us to his barbecue sauce business. That's right, Doxie Guy Barbecue is here to talk about the source for his sauce inspiration, his barbecue heritage, and he's going to share some advice for business and barbecue. Doxie Guy Scott also talks about his grandmother's special corn pudding recipe. He shares the specifics over at the Low and Slow blog at lowslowbbqshow.com. Visit that blog and you'll find the Doxie Guy BBQ corn pudding recipe. You'll also find Apple City Barbecue's recipe for jalapeno lime barbecue sauce. And if you look close, you'll get my take for Alabama white barbecue sauce. It's all at lowslowbbqshow.com. You can also listen to other podcast episodes there featuring North Carolina barbecue pitmasters from Midwood Smokehouse, John G's Barbecue, and Sam Jones Barbecue, just to name a few. But today's episode features a pit master, a sauce master, a festival tent operator, and a master of wiener dogs. That is dachshunds like Reese and Izzy. Those are the namesakes for his most popular sauces. Stay tuned till the very end of this episode and you'll find out how the Doxie Guy fares in the Low and Slow Challenge. Is barbecue a noun or a verb? Let's hear what he has to say. We're excited to welcome Doxie Guy Barbecue to the Low and Slow Barbecue Show. We've got the Doxie Guy himself, Scott Schiffel. Scott, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, it's going fantastic. Couldn't be any better because we're talking about barbecue. And you're the man for barbecue sauce. And that's where I want to get started. Doxie Guy Barbecue and barbecue sauce. How did you get started doing barbecue sauce, Scott?
I'm going to have to blame it on the pandemic.
Oh.
So, yeah, I mean, I'd been making it for years, kind of a quote as a moonshiner, if you will, kind of under the table to my buddies and stuff like that. And I'd heard for years, hey, you need to bottle this barbecue sauce. You need to bottle this stuff. And I said, no, it's a hobby. I don't want it to be a business. I don't want it to be a job. I don't want to hate it. I'm not going to do it. And, but then during the pandemic, I got bored. My full-time work was cut by 60%, as well as my salary. So I was sitting at home, just what am I going to do with myself? Because if I'm not busy, I'm going to get in trouble. So I got to get busy. So I started reading and trying to figure out, what does it take to put a product into a human being's body? I figured, coming from the medical field, I figured there was more to it than just bottling this stuff up and sticking it on a store shelf, and sure enough it was. And so I spent the majority of my time, during our lockdowns or whatever, trying to figure that out, and reading and learning about the processes and learning about the retail space and the manufacturing space and stuff like that. And so that's where it came to light.
Right. So something good came out of something bad. And that's not an uncommon story in this day and age. But,
Right.
Go back a little bit to the, when you were as a hobby. What interested you in making the sauce as a hobbyist?
So, I have to give my roots back to Eastern North Carolina with my family. My grandfather was a hog farmer and the best barbecue on the planet.
Yeah.
If you ever want to take a ride with me to Lewisburg, North Carolina and do some old school real whole hog, that's where it's at.
Fantastic.
Right. So I learned his recipe years ago, and I used it for a long time. But my parents drugged me to this part of the state in Hickory, North Carolina, about 45 years ago, and I've been back and forth between the Raleigh area and here. But the majority of my life I've been here, and as you know, east and west are two totally different things, right?
Sure.
And I'm an Eastern North Carolina boy at heart. No matter how long I've lived here, that vinegar has got my heart. And so that's where I started to tinker and play with sauces, and decided I came up with something that was an East meets West. How do I get my Western North Carolina friends and family to take on this Eastern North Carolina thing that I rave about? And that's where Izzy's Might Go Crazy, which is one of my sauces, came from. It's what I would call my hybrid, if you will, or my East meets West is what I've started calling it lately. Where I've taken that Eastern North Carolina and thrown a little West, a little bit of sweet in there, a little bit of red in there to kind of get and to take away a little bit of the pungent, of the vinegar. And it's done really well. It's been really popular.
Yeah. So. Cool. So like a combination. So, and take me a little bit through the process of making that, the trial and error stages, and how do you decide when, this is finally right, let's get it in the bottle and get it out to people?
Well, first of all, you got to like it yourself, right?
Oh, sure.
I'm a chef that if I won't eat it, I'm not going to make it for you, you know. And I picked that up a long time ago. I think I saw it on a restaurant wall somewhere where some local restaurant I'd eaten at. I thought it was really cool. This chef had a sign up that said, if I won't eat it, I'm not going to make it for you, type of thing. So a lot of the process was just in the kitchen, trial and error with pots and pans and different ingredients, picking out different things, add a little of this, add a little of that, right? That's how it all comes together. Experimenting with what I knew from my grandfather, taking some elements of growing up, with my mother, as she was a caterer. So she had a catering background. I have a catering background from my time in Raleigh. I was actually a chef for a catering company out there for a while. And so just taking the different elements of ingredients and flavor profiles and trying to come up with something that would be functional for me. And then I started, of course, my wife is a big part of this. I reach out to my wife, hey, honey, taste this. Hey, kids, taste this, And then from there, you got to take it to your friends, and you take it to your friends, and all right, what do you think? And of course, your friends are always going to tell you, yeah, man, that's the best stuff ever, And it's funny because when it came time to the pandemic and I started looking into bottling this stuff, and like I said a little while ago, hearing it for so long, yeah, you should bottle this stuff, you should bottle this stuff. Your friends are always going to tell you your stuff is the best ever. But I've always had it in the back of my head, is it really? Is it really good enough for the masses? Is it really, or are my friends just telling me it's that good? Right?
Yeah, they just being nice.
Yeah, right. So again, on the moonshiner type stage, I was selling barbecue because a lot of people around here know, if they want some good barbecue, they reach out to me, and I'll do barbecue for parties and stuff like that sometimes. And the first question is are you giving your sauce away with it?
Oh.
And that was happening more and more and more, where it became more about the sauce than it did even the barbecue. And I know there's something we'll talk about in a little while regarding what goes and what doesn't, sauce or not. But that question became more and more prevalent over the years, and I was continuing to hone my skills at a smaller scale from whole hog, doing Boston butts and stuff like that. And it became really popular, and that's where the sauce started kind of really getting a spread. And then when it came time to start Doxie Guy during the pandemic, I'd also been talking to my mother. She has a barbecue sauce recipe, and I said, and it's something that's never been written down, and she had all intentions of taking it to her grave. And I said, Mom, look,
don't do that.
Don't do that. Why? Yeah. Why? What's the point?
Yeah. Spread the love.
she ended up trying to write it down, and I ran with it, and I worked on it, and I took it to her, and I got it to where she said, well, it's close, and I said, well, I'm going to do a couple things to it, because understanding the competition barbecue space, from doing a lot of that stuff in the past, I knew it didn't fit well in the competition circuit. I knew there was some things that needed to be done with the viscosity and stuff like that to try to make it fit that space a little bit better. So in the end, when I gave my mother one of the first official bottles off the manufacturing line, she said, "That's not my barbecue sauce."
Mom was surprised.
We had a little chat about that. And, it's close. is very close. It has all the elements of it, but
Mhm.
it's rooted from a family recipe with some changes to make it fit that competition space, and in my opinion, to make it fit the masses, and do well on a retail front. And that's where Reese's Apple of My Eye came from. So I know you've seen both of my barbecue sauces out
Yep.
there. There's a few more that are coming,
Okay.
hopefully. But Reese's Apple of My Eye is named after all of our sauces are named after a couple of our dachshunds.
Uh-huh.
So Reese's is named after one of our dachshunds who's actually sitting in my lap right now. This is Reese's, little sweetheart, and she's the sweetest of all of our dogs. She's my mother's favorite of our dogs, and the sauce has a honey and apple background, so
Okay.
it's a sweet barbecue sauce.
Yeah.
The dog is a sweet dog. The barbecue sauce is a family recipe handed down from my mother, so that's how we got the name Reese's
Yeah.
Apple of My Eye, because Reese's my mother's favorite of the pups,
Yeah.
and it's a honey and apple backed sauce.
Cool.
Um, yeah, Izzy's came from a little different name. So Izzy's Might Go Crazy came from, oh my gosh, I'm crazy for smashing together East and West. And Izzy is one of our other pups who is very anxious, very high strung, and always nervous and kind of crazy acting. So that's how we came up with Izzy's Might Go Crazy.
Yeah, cool. So Reese's Apple of My Eye, kind of a honey barbecue, and the Izzy's is a Eastern Western mix.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. That's great. So what's your favorite sauce?
Izzy's has my heart. It
Yeah,
really
because of
does.
that Eastern vinegar, right?
Yeah, it does. And it's the first one that I can truly call my own.
Hmm.
That wasn't rooted from a family recipe or whatever. I would love to, and I know my grandfather would be super ecstatic. I'd love to produce his sauce as well at some point and give it a nice name and do something cool with it. And so that one might be coming down the pipe soon.
Yeah, that's cool. We'll definitely look forward to that. And of course, you can check out Doxie Guy's sauces at doxieguybbq.com. That's their website. And they got a lot of good stuff there. Scott, tell me about, using the sauce. How do you suggest that people use these couple of sauces? Is it use after you cook? Do you use it before? How does the sauce work into your preferred usage, I guess?
Yeah, so I guess going out to, like you saw me at the Waldensian Festival a couple of weeks
Hmm.
ago, and going to these barbecue events and these big events that we go to where we're letting people taste and try our sauces. I mean, that's how we get it out there, right?
Hmm.
Try it. Once they try it, they're hooked. They usually buy it. But the biggest question I get a lot of times that surprises me is that people marinate. They want to marinate with it. They think that that's the start, that I have to marinate, dump it into a bowl, pour out this whole entire bottle of barbecue sauce in a bowl and stick some raw
No,
chicken into it.
no.
No, don't do that. No, don't do that. Like my first thing to them is you're just pouring money out.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much. And both of my sauces are definitely not marinades.
Okay.
Both of my sauces are finishing sauces.
Hmm.
So the last 15 minutes of your cook or the end of your cook is really where they're going to shine and where you're going to get the most value out of them. And you're going to get the most flavor out of them. If you're marinating with them, especially with that vinegar. I've had a lot of people ask about, do I marinate with Izzy's? And, what ends up happening is that vinegar will start to cure your meat.
Mm.
If you stick that in the refrigerator overnight, with some chicken or some pork chops or something like that, you're going to start to cure the meat, and it's definitely going to affect the cook,
Hmm.
and it's not going to turn out well.
Yeah.
So
So
definitely
definitely
both.
cool, a finishing sauce. So, that kind of brings us to the point, and we've talked to a lot of barbecue pit masters on there, and it sounds like you've definitely got a lot of great barbecue experience that we'll talk about here in just a moment. But, these guys and you, I'm sure, say that, the sauce is just totally optional. It's only an addition after, you get the true flavor of the meat, and then you decide, what sauce and how much sauce. So what's your opinion on sauce versus no sauce?
I agree it has a place, and it's not for everything.
Hmm.
Every cook doesn't deserve or need sauce on it. It's definitely. A lot of people say, well, if you need sauce, you're just covering up your terrible meat, and I don't think that's true. I think that um, you're complementing what you've already done
Hmm.
with your meat. The same thing goes for rubs. We've got a line of rubs that we plan to release very soon. We've got hopefully one coming out in the next couple of months that I'm actually getting ready to talk to my vendor, my producer, about getting going. And the same thing goes with that. You can overdo it to
Mm-hmm.
where all you're going to taste is that rub, or you can do it to bring out the elements of that piece of meat that you've brought home, whether it be from a local butcher or whether it be from your local grocery store. That I think that's where a lot of that comes from.
Yeah, you want
Um,
to accentuate the quality of the meat, whatever it might be, right?
absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the rubs, and that's a great segue for us. When I'm over at DoxieGuyBBQ.com, I see a lot more than the sauces. Of course, I see your cute dogs. But tell me about some of the other stuff. I see your merchandise, but there's also some rubs and looks like some other brands that you've got promoted out there. Tell me a little about that.
Yeah, well, over the years, I've made some great friends along the way.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the coolest people I've ever met is a gentleman by the name of Alton Paris. I had the pleasure of meeting him down in Georgia a few years ago, and he owns Two Gringos Chupacabra.
Mm-hmm.
He's very well known in the competition circuit. Brisket Magic is an amazing product. A lot of your competition cooks use that Brisket Magic as a base on their brisket. He's released everything he releases is just fire. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it really is. And I've even questioned myself when I start thinking I'm going down this path of releasing my rubs, like, how am I ever going to compete with Alton Paris? How am I ever going to compete with Two Gringos Chupacabra? Because this stuff is just fantastic.
Yeah. Well, it's
He's a
not about
Texas.
competing, and maybe about having your own thing, right?
It is having my own thing,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, for sure. And they all have their place, right? So I picked up his line to compliment for my website to
Mm-hmm.
try to help us at these vendor shows that we go to, these festivals that we go to. That was really where my start of it, of bringing the rubs into it, came from. Is I needed something else on my booth, at my 10 by 10 booth at
Mm-hmm.
these festivals. I've got my 2 bottles of barbecue sauce. Well, it's kind of plain Jane looking and doesn't capture your attention, when you're looking at it as you're walking by. But if there's this whole other line of products there, then you're more apt to stop and take a look and see what's going on. And I'm
Sure.
able to give people more things to try and more things to think about. I'm able to give them extra things that they can take and complement with my sauces as
Mm-hmm.
well. So, hey, you're going to do a pork butt? All right, grab this rub right here, and you're going to run this one, and then you're going to finish it with Izzy's or whatever.
Sure.
And it gave us a whole nother element to talk about. And then I met some guys from down in Georgia that had started up Blackbeard Spice Company, and I tried a couple of their spices, and that Calico Jack, just, man, that stuff is so good.
Mm.
You take it and some Reese's Apple in my eye with some chicken wings, and it's just a game changer. So decided to pick that line up as well and add that to the mix. I didn't want to carry stuff that you can run out to Walmart and Food Line and buy.
Mm.
Everything we're doing is more that boutique level, more
Sure.
that higher level, that competition grade, if you will, the backyard pitmaster grade, if you will.
Yeah.
And that's kind of why we picked those products up and started carrying those. They've done very well with our website. I would say probably 60% of our orders. It's probably fair to say 60% of our orders end up coming, either they come with a rub and sauce order together, or they come back and order some rubs later, which is nice. As far as merchandise, the only reason I'm doing that is brand recognition.
Sure.
Doxie guy, brand recognition, getting that logo out, getting people starting to recognize it. The hats have been super popular, and the T-shirts have been pretty popular as well. And then I do have some other merchandise on there that I'm kind of doing as a favor, if you will. I'm an administrator of a group on Facebook called RecTech Mafia. It's one of the largest RecTech grill Facebook groups that's out there.
Okay.
There's like 45,000 members.
Wow.
And they asked me to, since I had the platform for e-commerce already and the ability to do shirts and stuff like that, they asked me if I would be willing to host the shirts for the group. And so that's why those are stuck out there on the website as
Yeah.
well.
Well, that's
we
cool. You've
sell
got
to
a lot of variety, a lot of different things to reach people, and it all kind of complements one another. Of course, that's at
Yep.
DoxieGuyBBQ.com. You can get all the details and again see the cute dogs there. Now, tell me, you don't have to get into numbers if you don't want to, but since COVID and the business has started, how's it been going for you? And tell me, it sounds like you're just doing more than the website. Obviously, you're getting out to the festivals and running that circus. How much of that of your time is spent, kind of doing that sort of thing out on the road?
Right. We do about we do a festival a month, and I try not to do June and July. It's just brutal.
Hmm.
And But we do about one a month. We are going to do the Hickory Christmas Fair that's coming to Hickory this year.
Hmm.
It's like a 3-day event here in town. That's going to be. It looks like it's going to be spectacular and a first time for Hickory. So that's going to be cool. We do the Lexington Barbecue Festival. The only way to do this is you've got to get people to try your product, and the only way to get people to try your product is have them taste it. Well, how are you going to do that in mass? And so picking events that in the communities that we're in, but now we're spreading out across North Carolina. We've done some stuff in South Carolina and so on, and just putting it in their mouth. And I just feel like that's the grassroots way, and the best way to get it out there, because you're just in the sea of barbecue sauces that are out there. I mean, you go to Food Line or Walmart and you walk down the aisle and there's 10,000 bottles
It
out
gets
there.
more every week.
I know, it's insane. It's a tough place to be. And
Yeah.
why are you going to grab that bottle? The label looks cool,
That's
or
it.
something you read on it looks cool, right? So that's super important.
Hmm.
But what's most important is what's inside that bottle, and you don't
Hmm.
know if you just grab it off the shelf, right?
Yep.
So we felt like if we get out in front of the masses at these barbecue festivals and these other, signature town events and things like that, that we put it in the people's mouth, and they're going to be a customer forever, and they're going to go home and they're going to tell all their buddies, or they're going to have a cookout and they're going to tell 100 friends, and that's just how it's going to grow.
Yeah.
That's the method we decided to take with it.
Do you feel like you're taking hold? Is it growing for you? Y'all seeing some success?
It is. It's done well. I mean, we're 3 years in now. We've produced about 12,000 gallons, if I'm doing my math right.
Wow.
Yeah, about 12,000 gallons we've sold.
Okay.
And we sell in 16-ounce bottles.
Hmm.
So we're in about 30 plus stores,
Okay.
small stores. We're in some Ace Hardware.
Hmm.
We're in some butcher's markets. We're in some produce places, things like that, more boutique stores. That's kind of where we shine. We don't
Yeah.
sit on the shelf next to Sweet Baby Ray's. It's a different caliber of product. It's not a
Yeah.
bottle of corn syrup. So we're
Sure.
proud to be part of the North Carolina Agriculture Program. That's helped us out a lot too. They
Yeah.
got to be NC.
Hmm.
We're using a North Carolina bottling company. We're using North Carolina Honeys, and we're able to be a part of that program because of that, which is awesome.
Yeah, fantastic. True North Carolina, start to finish. That's fantastic. So let's take a step back and talk about the barbecue. And my first question is, and you've alluded to some of the barbecue, your experience and your catering businesses. And Scott, why don't you bring the barbecue out with your sauces, or do you? And couldn't that be another vehicle to sell it out there? Matthew Register over at Southern Smoke NC kind of talked about that's how he got started into doing the barbecue business. So do
Right.
you take your barbecue out there and serve it up as a vehicle for the sauce?
I have a menu drawn up. I have a restaurant name. I have a complete menu ready to go to the print shop. And there's been 3 times over the last 6 to 8 years that I've said, I'm leaving my job. I'm giving up everything, and I'm going to go start a restaurant, and I'm going to do this.
Man, do it. Hickory needs it.
I know. And every time I do it, I talk myself out of it at the last minute. I mean, I was at the point 3 years ago, I was actually shopping space and speaking to real estate agents and stuff, and really starting to dig my heels in. And I don't know why, but I just keep getting scared. It's a tough industry.
Mm-hmm.
It is a really tough industry, and the marketplace over the last couple of years. I think the last time that I bailed out, which was 2 years ago, when I walked away and I said, Scott, what are you thinking? You can't do this right now. We saw all the things going on with employee shortages, and
Mm.
we saw rising food costs, and we saw supply chain problems, and all these things. And I told myself from a business perspective, this is just not the right time. And I
Mm-hmm.
think, when it's time, God will let me know it's time for me to do it. And
Sure.
until then, I've still got my full time job in the medical space. I enjoy it, and as long as I keep enjoying that, and as long as they keep me around, I've been there 12 years at the same place. I'm going to keep hanging on to that. And this is it's a Doxie Guy Barbecue is a job, but it's still a hobby.
Yeah.
And that I think that's one of my holdups as well, is like, do I really want this to become a job that I hate? And I don't think it will, because I love it so much. But there is that piece of it in the back of my head. So
Yeah.
that's why I haven't done it.
Sure. Well, restaurant business can be a grind, and they are short lived, especially in sort of Western North Carolina. They're here one day, they're gone the next. So, hey, no problem. Get your business Doxie Guy. Let your hobby pave the way for something for the future if you're looking
Right.
into that. But you're talking about your barbecue. What do you feel like you're good at? Well, let me just start at the beginning. How did you get into doing the barbecue? You mentioned your grandfather down east, but then beyond that, what happened?
Yeah, so as a youngster, hanging out with him all night with all his buddies,
Mm-hmm.
sitting beside of a stick burner,
Yeah.
they're sipping on accoutrements from some bottle that somebody brought and made, and cooking a whole hog, and learning how to keep the fire, and just watching and learning from them through the years, and it just came naturally. And then when I got my own, when I moved out of my parents' home and got my own place, started cooking on my own and started just honing it. I've done, I've always I've always had a love for a stick burner, but at almost 50 years old now, I'm getting lazy, and these pellet grills came out, and I really got lazy with those things. I can cook all night and go to bed now. So,
Yeah. You go to
um,
sleep on your meat, we like to say.
right, right. So, but as far as my game is pork barbecue. I
Okay.
mean, that's just where it's at for me.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll cook anything. I can do, I can do a fantastic prime rib. I can do fish. I love doing a lot of fish. But I cook outside 365 days a year. We've got two brand new ovens here in our house, double ovens in our house, and a nice induction cooktop. And I go outside and cook.
Yeah.
I feel like that's where I belong.
Yeah.
And over the last year, my wife and I have we've actually just spent a small fortune outside and built a complete outdoor kitchen. So I've got plumbing, all my grills, everything out there for me, and it's been fantastic. I mean, I just love it. I love being outside. I love the smoke, and I love fire.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, that's what we all like, getting out there. That's what draws us to it, right?
Right.
And you mentioned some of the collaborations you've got there on your website. You do any collaborating with any pit masters around to help sell the sauce? And I mentioned that because I know there are a couple. I've seen you promote a couple of events.
Yeah, there's we have a few guys out there that have competed and done really well with our sauce.
Hmm.
Roddy Trevino down in Texas has done really well with it and competing in the CBA circuit down there. We've had a few others that have done well. Roddy actually got a Grand Reserve champion one weekend, and he was super pumped. He used Reese's apple of my eye for his cook that weekend, and he did fantastic. And
Cool.
so that was super exciting to be able to know that we had created a product that down in San Antonio area of Texas, it
Mm,
could help bring home a Grand Reserve champion. I mean,
yeah.
that kind of says a lot. Like
Sure.
if you did it in Texas, you did it right, because they're supposed to be the barbecue kings,
I
even
don't know
though
about that.
North Carolina's got it going on, but it was a proud moment to be able to say we did something big in Texas. So,
Yeah, that's
and I know
fantastic.
it was all about his cook, but just the fact that Doxie Guy Barbecue kind of helped that along the way was super awesome.
Yeah, you got to be part of that. So I want to take you back into the barbecue, and you talk about in catering experience and cooking. God, obviously, you got a bunch of stuff going on outdoor cooking. So let's talk about barbecue 101 with our Doxie Kai. Give us a tip or a one of a kind practice that everybody should try to follow when they're trying to make their own sauce. If we go towards the sauce street.
Um, Doxie, well, tip 101 for barbecue sauce, for not for barbecue sauce, but for barbecue in general, time is your enemy. Everybody wants to worry, well, how long do I cook that?
Yeah.
And that's the worst question. I can't stand that question. You're not using an oven, you know. You got to let the meat decide. You got to
Right.
learn to feel it. You got to know what it feels like. If you're doing a brisket, you got to know what that brisket feels like. If it's probing like warm butter, you know what I mean? It's all about temperature and not about time, and
Yeah.
that's number one.
Yeah. Well, and then what about for the sauce? If I'm going to go try to make a sauce, what should I try to think about?
You're getting into a big marketplace,
Yeah.
and I guess I knew that walking down the aisles of the grocery store. There's 1,000 barbecue sauces at every store. It's a tough place to get into. I'll be honest. You're not gonna be a millionaire overnight, no matter how good it is. And the one thing I learned obviously is you can't produce it at home and bottle it and stick it out on a store shelf.
Yeah.
So know that you're going to have to get involved, probably unless you have the facilities that are FDA cleared and so on to be able to produce, to be able to stick that UPC code on it and legitimately have it in a grocery store environment or a retail environment. You're going to have to you're going to have to go that route. And that's an interesting. It's a very interesting space because the one thing I've learned is nobody is going to care about your product as much as you do.
Right.
No matter what, no matter how good your co-packer is, they're just not going to put into it the heart that you have in it.
Sure. Well, but let's take it a little bit to a more local level. This Chigger
Okay.
Willard is in the kitchen and I'm making up a sauce. What should I keep in mind? And I'm not thinking about serving the masses. I'm just getting the little Chigger Willards get their sauce
Want
on
to
the
get your thing going on?
Yeah.
Oh man. Low and slow, man. Just like the name of your show.
Sure.
Take your time. Really cook it down, and you're gonna want to let your ingredients meld together,
Okay.
and that doesn't happen immediately. It's
Right.
something that takes time for especially when you get into rubs as well. You would think you throw some salt and pepper together, it's there, but you let that salt and pepper and the other things that you put together in that rub sit for a while together, and they start to kind of work together and meld together better. You're going to have a different flavor profile tomorrow morning than you had this afternoon whenever you took it off of the stove. And so I think that's really important to remember, is that you've got to let the ingredients start to kind of to marry up to each other.
Yeah, that's great advice. I really love that. Appreciate that. So let's talk about what happened when Scott didn't have good advice. So let me hear about some mistakes. I know that sauce is sort of probably a trial and error, but what do you feel like is the worst experiment or the worst batch that you've made with your sauce adventures?
I scorched a batch real bad one time that I
Yep.
was making here at the house, and just not paying attention. I
Sure.
walked away and I forgot what I was doing. I was low and slow, and
Right.
man, I scorched it, and I threw away quite a little chunk of money. When you're talking 30, 40 quarts of barbecue sauce that you're
Yeah.
trying to make a run on to see what happens with it. Burned it up pretty good.
Yeah. Outside burning it, is it hard to make a bad tasting sauce though?
I mean, everybody's got their own flavor profile, so
Right.
I guess you might could add the wrong ingredient, something that doesn't go well together.
Yeah.
You get something that's kind of oily, and it's just not blending in there right. You got to be careful with stuff like that. So yeah, you could screw one up.
You can screw.
I've been lucky.
Yeah.
I haven't had any where my wife was just like, I can't eat that, or my kids were like dumping it out in the trash can.
Right. Well, but I mean, if you
Maybe
go
I've
back
been
to
lucky along the way.
you go back to granddad's traditions and you get that knowledge from the get-go, it's hard to mess up,
It
something
is.
that's got so much experience doing, right? So
Yeah,
let's go a
hundreds
little
of
bit.
years of experience help for sure.
Yeah, well, let's go a little bit further into some of those family jewels or secret time, as like we like to call it. What do you enjoy most so far about your barbecue sauce business?
I like getting it out there and talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
I love going as much of a grind as it is to go to these vendor events. I mean, that Lexington Barbecue Festival last year, my wife and I, we sat down in the truck, and I thought we would sit in the truck at the end of it for an hour and a half and not move. We were just like, how do we even drive home from this thing?
Yeah.
Because we started at 3:30 in the morning, and we had to set up our booth and get everything ready. And when 8 o'clock hit, boom, it was just like they opened floodgates, and we talked and we talked and we talked. And that's what I was getting to, is that I love talking to people. I love spending time with people. I love talking about cooking. And so, bringing this sauce to the masses has given me an open door to be able to talk to so many more people about the thing I love. And that's being behind a grill or being behind a stove, cooking and competing and playing around with different sauces and doing cool meats. And if you follow me on Facebook, even on Doxie Guy and Instagram and some of those things, I'm not scared to go grab something just off the cuff, some crazy piece of meat that somebody wouldn't think about, and try to figure out something really cool to do with it and how to present it and make it look appealing. It's an art form, and I love it, and the people aspect as well.
Definitely. You got a passion for the people, but also a passion for the food and the preparation and the barbecue, the low and slow life, right? So,
food brings people together.
Yeah, absolutely. Good food does, good conversation as well. So, what do you feel like it takes to be successful in the barbecue sauce business? And you touched on a little bit of that. You got to stick with it and you got to research all these things, but beyond that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to be 100% behind it. You've got to be 100% on board with your own product. Like I mentioned before, if you don't like it yourself, I would never be a good salesman for a product that I didn't like. So if I was a Ford guy, there's no way I could ever sell a Chevy. And I think that kind of goes into that. And you've got to have something that you've got your heart behind, and I think that's the most important piece. But marketing, and I feel like I'm not good at it, right? And I've had a couple friends try to help me like along the way, and man, you got to get better behind the camera. You got to come up with this persona for your barbecue sauce, and that's the one thing I think I struggle at that I could be better at, but it's so super important in the age of social media.
Yeah.
Traditional old school advertising is just not there. You've got to figure out a way to make your product just pop and make people stop when they're scrolling that screen, make them go, whoa, what was that?
Yeah.
And stop on it and pay attention. And I think that's just super important. And thinking of new ways to make that product pop are your biggest asset, I think, to helping you market the new brand.
It's definitely a personality-driven business. Like you said, the face behind the camera, you see so much of that, but you got to get somebody's attention to make them stop in order to take an interest in it, right? Whether you're giving them a taste at a festival or catching an eyeball there on Instagram. And of course, everybody want to follow you out there on Instagram. I do as well. Doxie Guy BBQ, right? Doxie Guy BBQ. So we'll follow you.
Doxie GUY BBQ. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. DOXI Doxie, right? Like the Doxie.
DOXIE.
Yep. Okay, right. Sorry. So let's talk about barbecue advice. Where do you turn when you're looking for barbecue advice?
Oh man. My grandfather, number one.
Yeah.
And there's still things that I'll tackle that I've never touched before, and a lot of it I'll research the internet a little bit. I mean, we've got that at our disposal. It's a great I still talk to my grandfather about what I do. I've got friends in the barbecue space that are in the competition circuit, and that I talk to. I've got friends that are chefs, and they're doing it at that level. So reach out to those types of people. But the internet, again, is also a good resource. But the internet's full of lies too. So
Sure.
You can't trust everything you read out there.
That's right. Well, hopefully all the barbecue advice is good, because barbecue folks aren't going to steer barbecue folks wrong, right?
Right.
So steer me right. Steer this barbecue person right. What is your favorite North Carolina barbecue restaurant?
Bees Barbecue, hands down.
You're not the first person to say that, for sure.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
My mother would tell you that I was raised at Parker's. That I was born in Greenville, North Carolina, and Parker's Barbecue was pretty much a weekly stop for us. But also Bees Barbecue. I got to experience Bees Barbecue from the minute I could chew on barbecue.
Wow.
And anytime anybody asks me, it's Bees Barbecue. But it's just like Aaron Franklin's place out in Texas. You're going to have to go stand out there in the morning and wait. because when it's gone, and they
Yeah.
close down.
Yeah. Luke Sears from the Three Beers Down also cited Bee's Barbecue as his favorite place.
Nice.
He knows down
All
east as
right.
well.
He's a
So,
smart guy.
yeah, you talked a lot about Granddad. I want to take for a second and talk about your grandmother and her corn pudding. That's the recipe that you've shared with us, and we're going to get it over on the blog at lowslowbbqshow.com. But talk to me about grandmother's corn pudding. What's in it, and what's it about, and why is it special to you?
It's an Eastern North Carolina thing again. Like I said, my Eastern North Carolina roots are deep. I'm so sorry, my lawn guys are out there mowing the yard. If you're getting any feedback,
Yeah, no worries.
But my grandmother, watched her make this recipe for years, and every time I would go down to Lewisburg, that was just one of my favorite things to eat when I would go down there. I would nearly clear out the casserole dish.
Yeah.
And the most important aspect of it, I think, is that if you've ever heard of Silver Queen corn, it's a white corn. It grows very well down in that part of the state, and I'm not even a big fan of yellow corn, but I love Silver Queen corn. A good homegrown Silver Queen corn is what makes this recipe.
Okay. Yeah.
In my opinion. But it all just goes back to walking into grandmother's kitchen and smelling that corn pudding baking in the oven. I actually do it outside on my grills now, of course. I cook everything outside. I bake and everything. So, but it's a fantastic recipe. It's kind of a custardy type thing, if you will. It's got it's basically sugar, self-rising flour, some eggs, some butter, some milk, and some good Silver Queen corn, and bake it in the oven, and it's amazing. So I don't mind sharing that recipe with the masses, because I think it's something everybody should get to try.
Yeah, and when should I have this? Any special occasions, or just on Wednesday night?
It's a quick enough thing that you can throw together if you want to take it to the potluck, or if you want to have it on a Wednesday night when you're hurrying to get out to church or whatever.
Yeah.
It's done cooking in 45 minutes. You can whip it together in less than 10 and throw it in the oven, and you're good to go in 45 minutes.
Okay.
So it's easy enough. It's not something that's going to take you all day to throw together.
Cool. And we'll have all the details on the website at lowslowbbqshow.com. And thanks for sharing those with us, Scott. And as we kind of wrap up, it's that time of the podcast where we go into the low and slow showdown. And we're going to take some quick hitters here. And I already probably know some of the answers here, but we're going to fire ahead with them as well. Maybe a little explanation where possible. So right out of the gate, I got to ask you, gas, pellets, charcoal, or wood?
Wood, but pellets my game lately.
Yeah, lazy old guys.
Wood all day long.
But pellets for the ease, all right? Well, So what is your favorite wood for meat smoking?
Hickory and red oak.
Why do you choose those?
I like the subtleness of it.
Okay. Yeah, good call. So what is the best state for barbecue in these United States?
North Carolina.
Excellent. So best North Carolina style, Eastern or Western?
East.
And why? And you can't just say because that's what Granddad made. Although that's a perfectly valid reason.
It's the vinegar base.
Yeah.
The hogs are raised right out that way. There's something in the soil. There's something in the corn.
Yeah.
It's so much better out there.
Great. So when you're having barbecue, do you want pork, beef, or chicken?
I'm a pork guy.
Sure. So sauce, better with or without?
For barbecue, it's a compliment.
Yeah.
So I'll go with.
Better with. When you have it, do you want it sweet or spicy?
I'm on the spicy vinegar side.
Yeah, I like that. So is barbecue a verb or a noun?
It's a noun.
It's a noun. And that, my friends, is the lowdown from Doxie Kai BBQ, the sauce master here in the Hickory Metro. Doxie Guy BBQ. Check him out at doxieguybbbq.com. Again, that's DOXIEGUYBBQ.com. Scott, thanks so much for joining us here on the Low and Slow Barbecue Show.
Absolutely, Tigger. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you so much. You've been listening to the Low and Slow Barbecue Show on the Mesh.tv network of podcasts. Be sure to visit us online at lowslowbbqshow.com. You'll find Doxie Guy's recipe and more details about Doxie Guy barbecue sauce While you're at lowslowbbqshow.com, look for other podcasts, including our interviews with the Carolina's best pitmasters, award-winning food journalist Hannah Raskin, and if you're getting ready for football season, be sure to check out our tailgating episode. If you like what you hear in the Low and Slow blog, be sure to follow our show in the podcast stream, give it a 5-star rating, and share it with your friends. Special thanks to my guest, Scott Schiffel, the Doxie guy from Doxie Guy BBQ. Thanks as well to our producer, Andrew Moose, and the whole team at the Mesh.tv network of podcasts. Most especially, thank you for listening to the Low and Slow Barbecue Show. Remember, for the best barbecue and the best barbecue podcast, make it low and slow.
You've been listening to The Mesh, an online media network of shows and programs ranging from business to arts, sports to entertainment, music to community. All programs are available on the website as well as through iTunes and YouTube. Check us out online at themesh.tv. Discover other network shows and give us feedback on what you just heard.